Welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hello, Susan.
Hello.
We are also joined today by Nick Fine, user researcher contracted to the UK Home Office, which I am told is a government thing. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, doing really good, thanks.
Yeah, so the Home Office doesn't mean he's working at home.
Yeah.
No, I'm working for kind of central government.
Yes.
And he did tell us before we started recording that he can't talk about what he's doing.
It was by the way, it's just a very cute name that it's called the Home Office.
We think that's cute. They just think it's normal.
No, I know. We've had a couple people from the UK on our podcast before, and they're always very very charming and adorable. All the strange ways they talk about stuff.
Strange to us. That's why we invite them on.
Yeah.
The Home Office, it's responsible for kind of homeland security and home UK domestic issues.
I guess that makes a lot more sense.
Protection. Yeah, so it's comprised of a number of units, but together we kind of protect the UK.
So we're bringing you on today because, correct me if this is wrong, Susan, you stumbled across one of his videos that intrigued you.
I didn't stumble. Through my wonderful feeds of social media, I stumbled upon a video. Actually, and I definitely want to talk about that. But before we do, I just want to mention that Nick is a first for us because I think this is the first time we've had a guest on the podcast who we've never talked before. This is like our first conversation.
Correct.
Yeah, usually we bring on friends.
Yeah, so, it's just a bunch of her like, yeah.
I'm not saying you're an enemy.
Remember, we were work together on that one.
I'm just this random guy that you dragged in off of the internet.
Let's just say, usually we say, oh, yeah, we worked together 15 years ago. And now it's like, no, I can't say any of that. So yes, I met in quotes. I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see. I met Nick by watching a very compelling video that he made and recently put up, and I found it, I think, through my LinkedIn feed. So, Nick, I think we should, I have all kinds of questions I want to talk to you about, but why don't you tell us about the video for people who, and we'll put a link to it if you want us to when we post the podcast, and I write a blog post when we post them, so we'll put a link to it. But what is the video? Why did you make it? And what is the rant that's in the video?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I made a video called UX Psychology. I bought your book, Susan, Neuro Web Design. I just checked it the other day, today, in 2001. It's on my Amazon. Wow. On my Amazon. I bought it, and I defended my PhD in 2009 and started working around late 2009, early 2010 as a commercial UX practitioner, a UX consultant, because being a man of psychology, coming in out of HCI and into UX, I was like, well, where's all the literature? And yours was literally the only one that was doing what you were doing, saying what you were saying, and applying psychological principles and knowledge to kind of design level thinking. And it was mind-blowing. It was an amazing, amazing book. And so for the past kind of 10 years or whatever it's been, I've been climbing the ladder of UX, starting off as a junior, midweight, senior, lead, etc. And being frustrated by what I see, but keeping quiet because I was the junior, the midweight, not the lead, not the senior, and just biting my lip. But after, I don't know, it must be about 10 years now, I can't keep quiet anymore. It's bonkers, crazy what I'm seeing going on. Some really just, I guess what I'm trying to say is 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, the message was, you're not the user, stop having developers developing user interfaces, talk to users, be user-centric. And people were encouraging small sample sizes at the 5-point sample thing of Norman Nielsen, guerrilla and hallway testing. It doesn't really matter about validity. Just talk to users. That in itself is a transformational change. But we're beyond that now. We're way, way, way beyond that now. And it's time for research in UX to kind of up its game significantly. As psychologists, we've been brought up in a certain way with social science research methods, with, rigor, validity, robustness, cornerstones of scientific inquiry, shall we say. And psychology in particular, it being a social science, tries particularly hard, maybe tries too hard sometimes, to be an established science or to be rigorous in its inquiry. UX and the research, the commercial research that we're doing needs to be of a higher caliber, grade, quality than it is today. So with all that in mind, I'm sitting there for 10 years, meek and mild, or going through this. And then a couple of years ago, the UX UI thing came around. Everybody wanted to be a user experience person. And we saw art directors, creative directors, project managers, product owners, recruiters, you name it. Everybody wanted to be UX. And so many people came over from the traditionally creative trades. They started to kind of define UX according to their own values and perspectives and tools. And there's so many people doing it that the actual, at least in the UK, from what I've seen, the fundamental perception and definition of UX changed from being a user-centric practice informed by research and user centricity, completely away from that to a kind of designer-centric rock star. I know what users need. I'm an expert. Let me put it down in glorious Technicolor. And that's happening today it's our whole market. And I have a responsibility. I think we all have a responsibility to say something, to say this is not okay. Business, commerce, it's critical to do valid research if you're going to invest millions of pounds in a campaign, in a product, in a service. But yet I still have arguments with people on an almost daily basis saying, well, I did a 5-point sample for a major national product. And it's like, no, that's not okay. 5-point samples aren't ever okay for that kind of an application or for most applications. So I made a video that said, look, I want to create a splinter group. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to be able to practice a user-centric. I want to carry on with what we were doing in UX. I want to carry on a user-centric behavioral design thing. I didn't want it to become a wholly visual design thing. It was always a balance of both, but it's become completely skewed. So UX psychology was created to create a community, a channel, a way of getting like-minded, psychologically driven, user-centric practitioners together to kind of become a force, become a thing, become a practice, to somehow distinguish ourselves from UX UI, from UX design, from graphic design, visual design, all those design elements which don't do user research. It's not part of their process. So that's where we're at, and that's why I made the video. It was really a kind of a responsibility, a culmination of frustration. Just needed to get that out there because I know that there are other people who feel the same, and clearly, Susan, you do. And so I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I've kind of, broken the ice. I've said the unspeakable. Let's now build upon that, and let's talk about this. What can psychology genuinely offer UX today? Because it's got everything to offer. And as I said in the video, psychology is the science of UX. And there's a lot of art and design out there. There's not a lot of science. We need to balance those scales. So that's where I'm coming from.
I like that.
Guthrie, I told you it was a rant.
No.
Oh, I didn't even rant on that one.
No. I thought that was pretty straightforward.
It was very straightforward. Yeah.
I'm being recorded.
But strong.
I'm on my best behavior.
He's strong. He's not like saying maybe this is true. It's like, this is true. So, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this work for so long that there's like this pendulum that kind of doesn't just even swing back and forth anymore. It kind of just, we need a better metaphor, Guthrie, because pendulums.
Describe what you're trying to say, and then I'll come up with a metaphor for you.
It's well, if you imagine a pendulum that is swinging back, going back and forth along a continuum.
I understand what a pendulum is.
Now, the pendulum got broken, and instead of swinging back and forth, it's just swinging wildly from all over the place.
See that,
What
but
would
you
that
said you
be?
needed a better metaphor,
Yeah,
and then
what
you
would that
used the
be?
bad metaphor. Why don't you, why don't you just describe what you're
I
trying to say?
just described it. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, I've just seen things got in terms of what is UX, what is usability, what is UI, which stands for user interface. So you have user interface design, and you have user experience design, and then you have human computer interaction, which you mentioned, Nick, when you said HCI. And
You've been calling yourself a behavioral. I mean, we've basically stopped using UX anymore, and
True.
you're a behavioral scientist now,
I'm a behavioral
brain
scientist. Yeah,
behavioral
I don't even
scientist.
call myself a UX person anymore. Although obviously we do a lot of UX stuff, and we teach a lot of UX stuff, or at least we teach stuff to people that would call themselves user experience professionals. But yeah, the terms have become, and I love following the forums. It's like, what's the difference between this and this and this and this? And it's like, oh my goodness, people were all over the place. But
Yeah.
I do, obviously, I think it's, well, maybe not obviously, but people who know me a little bit know that my background is psychology. And then I have, I have started to use the term behavioral science even more than psychology, because I think, um, Nick, that some of the new stuff coming out of like behavioral economics is really powerful. And Guthrie is an economist, and so he's more on that behavioral economics side. So he and I have discussions about, when is something behavioral economics, when is it psychology, what is behavioral science. I mean, we're even like tussling over
Hmm.
those
Yeah.
terms. But obviously, we care a lot about applying what we know about people, and what we know about people in, um, both from an individual point of view, which is what we tend to call the psychology, as well as from the situational point of view, which is what we tend to call behavioral economics. And um, and how that, how what we know uh, impacts or should impact the way we, what we build and how we build it, and what the thing, the technology, the software, whatever it is, ends up being, and how it's going to be used. And that's just and it's been interesting to see that's just our central message, and it's been interesting to see who's interested in that and how that changes over time.
Yeah. So all the lines are blurring in digital.
Yeah,
It just appears that way.
UX became a buzzword.
Yeah.
It
I
became the
mean,
hot thing.
it's definitely part of the evolution, of UX. And UX was kind of softly defined because it didn't really have a strong, hard definition. And because you can use it, you can talk about user experience, capital U, capital E, in terms of the area, like you would do psychology. But you can also, everybody has a user experience, everybody has a psychology. And the word gets bandied around. And a lot of people were using the word as an experience and mixing it up as a profession, if you know what I'm saying. So anybody has a user experience, therefore I can be a UX practitioner.
Well, so
It's that kind of logic.
we do these. So we give workshops. All right, we go into a company and we're giving a workshop on quasi UXy. Let's just say design for engagement, which is one of our more popular ones. It's a little bit of psychology and science, and it's a little bit of practical applicability, kind of a mix. And we're in these rooms at these companies, and the people in the rooms are UX professionals who are well versed in the field. There are like coders, computer people, engineers who, just very math, science, focused, dev focused, agile stuff. And then there's people who went to art school, where if you show them any sort of math, anything, they'll go screaming from the room. So
Yep.
it's like literally the most polar opposites of people are doing the same work.
and they all have very different approaches. It's
They
almost
have
a
to.
bit like I don't believe. See, HCI is this multi or interdisciplinary, where HCI itself doesn't act. It exists because of the contribution of the various professions or the various practices, right? So I was a psychologist doing HCI. You get computer scientists, and it's almost like that same interdisciplinary model has come over into the commercial world, where anybody can do UX from whatever practitioner standpoint you come from. But I don't think it doesn't translate well, because in academia you can do that. What you're not doing is building agile teams. You're not hiring talent and staff, which having it well defined and common practices and methodologies enables you to do. And I'm glad I'm not a hiring manager in UX these days, because it's a nightmare. It's really, really hard, because when I was recruiting, going through portfolios, seeing super high fidelity stuff, but absolutely no process, no research, no nothing, just look at the really cool stuff that I can draw. And it looked amazing, but it's never been tested, never seen a user, or it's tested the minute it goes live in production. And it's a difficult world to work in. So the reason why it's all about kind of refocusing ourselves is who is doing the behavioral design moving forwards. So you talk about behavioral science. I see us or UX as the practice of behavioral design. Now, I'm not doing the design anymore. I used to be as a full service practitioner, but now, because at least in the UK, UX is split clearly, and you've got user researchers and designers, or UX designers, UX, UI, that lot. And they are all amazing with drawing stuff and producing solutions, but they've got no idea about testing their work
So there really is a split. I mean, there is often a split here, but I think in the U.S. it's not totally consistent that the research is split from the design. You'll find there'll be some places where the same people they'll spend some of their time doing user research and some of their time doing design, and then you'll have other places where there's the user research group, and that is separate from the design group.
Right. So going back 2, 3, 4 years ago, at least, in the UK, we had the full service practitioner model. You could call me a UX designer back then, but my role fundamentally included research. So I'd spend almost as much time in the lab or in the field as I would do in front of Azure or something, producing wireframes and a prototype to test and iterate. I personally loved that world, because you're informing your solution through your research, you're generating hypotheses and ideas. I don't have to negotiate that with anybody or communicate it with anybody. All I have to do is make sure it validates well with the test audiences. So it's a much simpler life. But at least in the UK, there has been a clear split. There is very few minimal full service practitioner roles anymore. Designers that I've worked with in agencies and all the design studios, they're proper designers, amazing designers, but they're visual or digital designers. Science and validation and labs, it's utterly foreign to them. It's not part of their workflow. It's not part of their education, and neither should it be. As I've seen, the whole point about climbing the creative hill, when you go from junior to mid to lead to senior to design director, creative director, it's all about cultivating that sense of art direction, of that sensibility of a design sense. And you do it very much like an apprenticeship, and you learn from your elders and peers as you move up. But UX, or at least user research or user centricity, is the exact opposite of that. It's saying, no, I know nothing. Let me learn everything from the audience. One is top down, the other is bottom up. They could not be any more polar opposites.
So
of methodologies.
Have you been seeing? I mean, at least, and maybe we are seeing the same trend, but maybe from different perspectives. I think we're seeing, and I've said this before on the podcast, more people are doing UX in quotes than ever before, and at the same time, there is less UX being done. So, budgets for UX are gone in an agile dev cycle. There is no time to do user tests. there is, let's just do some A/B testing, and we gotta, we're gotta go. And so there's no time and no headroom. And so what perhaps used to be a dedicated, UX department, it does not exist anymore. And that role has kind of been given over to, well, we have a design department, and two designers took a class on UX. They could just do the UX, right? So would you agree with that? Are we just kind of describing the same thing?
Well, I mean, I think I want to say hardcore, but I don't mean that. I mean, not even purist. Most old school UX practitioners are of the same opinion. If you're not involving users in your process, you're not doing UX. It's just that simple. UX without user testing is not UX. That's what I have on my Twitter feed. There's no, how can you call yourself anything user experience if you're not talking to users? The whole idea of proxy design, I know what users want, that's going back 20 years ago. I mean, Alan Cooper wrote his book, I think in the 90s, The Lunatics Are Running the Asylum. And his central point was developers are the wrong guys or girls to be developing the front end experience, the user interface. And we're going back we're going back to kind of that kind of a time. We're not developer centric, but we're designer centric. Now, designers are a million times better than developers in most respects in regards to this, but they're still not the user. And every time I mentor a new recruit, a junior, they want a playbook of UX. They want me to be able to say, it's almost like I could give them Susan's book, give them your book, Susan, and be like, look, this is the only playbook you're going to get. This is the closest thing there is. Everything else is all project-based, audience-based. There are high-level psychological principles which you need to translate and distill and apply on your project, but you have to work those out. That's the whole point here. In design, I think there become trends and ways of doing things and sorts of things, and we have that in UX to an extent, but actually there are ways of doing things, if you know what I mean. There are ways that deliver results that are user-centric, okay, so let me put it this way. I get a lot of people asking me for kind of the answers to things, and like I'm the guru, like I'm an oracle. And I say, I'm not the guru. I might have gone around the block a few times, but I haven't worked on your brand. I don't know your users. I don't know your proposition or your service or your product. I don't have all the answers, but I do have the methods to get you those answers, right? Yeah. And that's what I'm driving at here is there's no playbook, but psychology has got all the methods to find out all the gold, all the magic, make it happen.
So you're creating a splinter movement.
Yeah, it's a shame it's come to that, but yes, it is, unfortunately. I can't be associated with non-user UX. I don't want to be a part of that.
I just want to make sure I know exactly what your splinter is. So you've staked, you put your flag in the ground, and you said, this is our land. What exactly are the borders of your new republic?
There's two key points. So one is to acknowledge psychology as a very valuable contributor to UX, or psychologists and social science research methods. That's number one. Well, there's three then. Number two is to distinguish ourselves from design-led, user-centric, non-user-centric stuff. And the third one is to say researchers, most researchers in the UK happen to have a psychology background. It's because it lends itself naturally to it. Is to say, look, researchers, we will be asked some very difficult questions moving forward by designers who we are going to need to support, be their servants. It's not all in one anymore. We have to up our game, and we have to do that en masse together, because it's not efficient us all making the same mistakes in pockets and silos. We need to learn together en masse and work out how do we adapt academic level research, social science research, into a commercial UX setting. So case in point, in government, one of the great things that government does, in the UK we have the GDS, which stands for Government Digital Service. And it's kind of like an overriding body which tries to standardize all the digital offerings throughout government. And that's a challenge and a half. And they've done some absolutely miraculous work. One of the most amazing things they do is we talk about user needs and pain points, but particularly user needs about the currency of what we do. You know, everything's in terms of user needs. We are not a commercial entity. We're not here for profit. We're here to serve citizens and to provide services as efficiently and nice and beautiful as possible, effective as possible. And so for me, the question I have is, when is a user need? Like, what sort of sampling, what sort of sample size do you reasonably need for a government level service to consider it a valid user need from which you move forwards? Is it 3 people in a sample of 10? Is it 5? Is it, what percentage are we talking about? And it becomes quite an interesting problem. And so it's that sort of issue which we need to just work out and agree some stuff, or iterate and learn and get better at doing. Because right now I've seen some absolutely horrible science, some shocking, terrible, bad stuff going on, not necessarily in government, but in previous gigs, previous jobs, where people are drawing enormous conclusions from very, very small samples or very small evidence. And then the business is going on and doing some very big things with that information. I've seen agencies produce persona decks, which are nothing but works of fiction at great cost. And then the business using that and distributing it around the department, designers using it, web analysts, everybody using it to move forwards. But that's because some midweight somewhere just made it up and wasn't able to show the methodology. This is serious stuff, very dangerous. We're talking multi-million-pound stuff and wastage because it's based on very invalid insight. And it's a problem. It's a massive problem. I don't think industry even knows it's a problem yet. So where I'm particularly successful is I make my clients a lot of money, or I achieve them their goals because this stuff works. And I've kind of kept it a bit secret to myself. It's like, these are my secret tools. But for the good of digital and for all of our user experiences in all of our interactions, this needs to go high and wide and far and wide. I mean, it just needs to be baked into user experience.
I very much agree.
How do we get there?
But yeah, exactly.
So the first step is UX psychology. I know it's not the greatest name. It's not cool. It's not very natty. I needed a signpost that spoke to people to who it needs to speak to, a recognizable signpost. The first thing that I see is to basically stand up and say, look, we're here. We've been quiet. We've all been way too quiet. We've let design kidnap our entire profession because we've been too quiet. Typically, most psychologists that I've met, we're in it for the behavior. We love people and human behavior. That's what we find fascinating. We don't want to be managers sitting in meetings all day. We want to be in the field, in the lab. We want to be seeing behavior. We want to be doing our thing. And as a result of that, most of us are not quiet, but they're not massive personalities or outspoken heads of people doing the circuits. And so I don't know what's happened, but all the bigger personalities and I guess maybe the more creative types they're probably just more appealing. I don't know, or just louder. We've been too quiet. So the step one is be louder. That's why I said I'll be the lightning rod. I'll take the hits. If somebody has to stand up and say this loudly and just get people together. So that's one, is identifying and kind of acknowledging ourselves and the value that we have, which is, it's undeniable. I feel like, I don't know, I just have to get this out there. I've never felt so strongly or felt so sure of something in my entire life. I've had 10 years of kind of my own hypothesis testing, confirmed and confirmed and confirmed. And once you have it confirmed, and I've got a portfolio full of evidence of, scientific behavioral design and testing works, it delivers everything that you want, and it's done it for me. It should do it for everybody else. So that's step one. Step two is, we live in a world of fake news and misinformation and terrible source validity, and people who just consume information without any care where it's come from or whether it's real or true or not. As a result of that, what I'm trying to say is, I firmly believe in the value of qualifications and certifications, and I think they are most valued in 2018 moving forwards, or as much value as they ever have been moving forwards, because we have to be able to validate who knows what. And it's becoming really, really hard out there right now with General Assembly and those sorts of Lynda and Coursera and all of those. Now, I'm not knocking them, okay? But what you can't do, and what I see happen frequently, is you'll get an art director, you'll go on a course, on a General Assembly course for a couple of weeks or 8 weeks or something, come out, be head of UX at a major brand, and then start hiring a team of creative designers. And they're building teams in their own image, if you know what I mean. And that's not UX, or at least that's not what was there beforehand. So I want some kind of way of distinguishing those people who come from a user-centric background. So have a psychology undergraduate degree is a really good start. You know, unfortunately, what I think needs to happen is probably a generational change. It's not something that can happen overnight. You're not going to get a seasoned practitioner going back to university for 3 years or 4 years to do an undergrad. It's unlikely. I'd like to find a way of getting a British Psychological Society or American Psychological Association a diploma or something achievable that is all about social science research methods, and that we can know that people know about validity and robustness and how to do solid research.
Well, you know, an interesting thing would be, I mean, in the U.S. at least, I don't know if this is true in other places, people who have undergraduate psychology degrees have the lowest income of any other college degree. And
wait, what? That
yes.
can't be right.
Oh yes.
Are you sure you're not talking about other science-based degrees?
No. I'll share the data with you. I'll even post it. I it's very strong data, and it shows that people who have an undergraduate psychology degree, only undergraduate. If you have a master's or a PhD in psychology, it's another story. But if you have an undergraduate psychology degree in the U.S., you have the lowest pay of anyone else.
Lower than English?
Yes.
What about art history?
Lower than history, lower than English. Keep naming them. If for a 4-year degree, and the reason is, I believe the reason is actually there's not that many great jobs that you can do with an undergraduate psychology degree, and so one thing, at least over here, Nick, would be to recruit all those people who are out there doing, they end up in all kinds of careers that is not what they, may not even have much to do with psychology anymore, is to recruit them. Many of them may prefer to go into this work.
Absolutely.
And get trained on the digital user research part. They have the psychology background. They have that psychology research background. They'll have to be trained on not that. They'll have to be trained on, the other parts of it. I would think there's a lot of them. And we regularly get contacted by people who've even had long careers in psychology, even with graduate degrees, who say, I want to switch. I want to do psychology research in this area of user experience. So, I mean, if they're interested, I know that the psychology people, undergrads, would be interested. The interesting thing is that usually what people say to me is, I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I had no idea about this work. So I didn't, it wasn't offered as an undergrad. I didn't have the option. I'm finding out about it now after I've graduated, so I'd like to switch into it. I'm involved in a couple of two universities, or at least in conversation with two universities about getting training in this at an undergraduate level, like it being a major and a degree you can get at an undergraduate level. That's really unusual over here, that you can get an undergraduate degree that combines, social sciences with digital technology. So that might help too. But I think in the meantime, we could try and recruit psychologists and then teach them what they need to know about the other pieces. Instead of, I think, going the other way around, which is what we've been doing, right? We take designers and developers and try and teach them psychology, which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's a lot of what my career has been. That I think that's a good thing, and I think we should keep doing it. But maybe we should also look at the other side of it.
Yes. You know what? On my first day of undergraduate psychology, there were all of us green undergrads in the big lecture hall. And I think it was Dr. Hilary Parman, who is a head of UX in Michigan, I think, or she's with Honeywell. She said to the whole room, who here wants to do clinical psychology? And 80% of the room of 200 people put their hands up. And she said, well, you know what, statistically, there's more likelihood that you're going to become accountants than you are clinical psychologists, right? Based on their data, right? And in retrospect, it makes absolute sense. We learned such brutal statistics that actually, yes, that being able to do ANOVAs and t-tests and all that shenanigans on paper really sets you up. Now, these days, it actually sets you up more for a career in data science, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is apart from the data science, at least from the model that I'm seeing here in the UK, coming out as a psychology undergraduate sets you up absolutely perfectly for a user research role, absolutely cleanly. You don't actually need to learn too much. It's more about just adapting for the real world and the booking, the practicalities of booking a lab and running a lab. But actually, most of that you've probably done on your undergrad. So we called them observation lounges at the time, but we spent a lot of time as an undergrad in the obs lounge, in the UX lab. So, back then it was all VHS and videotapes, but these days, it's all digital and easy. So I'd say you could take a fresh undergrad and put them in charge of a lab on their first day of work and be absolutely confident of the results, or, be quite confident of the results, unlike today where that's not the same. I mean, we've all sat in labs either on the same side of the glass or the other side of the glass and actually kind of cringing at the way the facilitator is doing things. And whilst the client might be loving it, inside you're thinking, oh my God, this is not good. You're leading the witness everywhere. It's effectively, live confirmation bias in front of the marketing director. And it's a bit of a nightmare. So yes, I think they've got a tremendous amount to offer. And this is not about alienating designers. I kind of want to say that on record, because this is not me versus designers. We as psychologists moving forwards are almost certainly going to be servants, to designers, to web analysts, to product owners, to business owners. We're there to serve their needs, to investigate for them, or to test their products or their iterations. So I don't want to be bouncing off against designers. All I'm saying is that as psychologists, we can do a great job for you. Let us work with us on this stuff. It's difficult, and I think what you're saying is in America, this split is happening slightly differently. It sounds to me that you guys have a lot of full service designers over there, but they're just called UX designers. They're not called UX architects or UX consultants. In which case, my message could sound offensive or aggressive towards them because they are doing research. It's just they're doing it under a designer banner. What I'm trying to say is I want to help mentor some of those people or teach them or support them to improve their research skills. And also to highlight psychology undergrads or anybody with a psychology training is somebody to work with and to learn from, because work together with them, there's a ton of benefit. Right now, it's an argument, unfortunately. And a lot of my peers don't want to have those arguments. So this is the problem.
So I have.
So do you? Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I got three points to say. Okay?
Yeah.
So the first point is that I did a little research, and you're probably wrong about psychology being the lowest paid major, but there's an asterisk there. If you there's the best study is this Georgetown study that happened recently, and the thing is that they actually looked at subgroups of what your major was actually in, and I think if you combine a lot of these lowest paid majors into a larger group, then you can end up in psychology. So the 10 majors with the lowest earnings are early childhood education, which probably gets lumped into psychology. Human services and community organization also probably gets lumped into psychology. Studio arts, social work, teacher education, visual and performing arts, theology and religious vocations, and elementary education, drama, theater arts, and family and community services. So those are the 10 majors with the lowest median earnings. But I think a lot of those get lumped into psychology, even though they are fundamentally different things.
I don't know. We may have a battle of the.
I'm just saying.
Research study battle.
I'm looking at a great study here.
Against your research study.
Well, okay. I would do that at your own peril. So that's part one. The second part that I think, at least here in the States, here's what I think happened. If you're going to be competent at UX research, and let's just say to have a fundamental understanding of what research is and what a sample size is, and to look at a project, to be given a project and to look at it from a scientific, analytical lens. Mm-hmm. Here in the States, you're probably looking at having a master's degree. That's so you are going to be an expert, and you are going to be expensive on the payroll. Mm. All the people who kind of came before me, who were the big time experts in their field and maybe the big senior researcher at the large company, they all got promoted to management. That's what happened to Susan. She was a top tier researcher, blah blah blah, and then she spent a decade being upper mid management, where she was chief of technical staff, and she was managing a bunch of people, but she was just doing technical staffy things. And so I think a lot of the very skilled people who know what they were doing, or Dean Barker, perfect example. He basically, some company was like, hey, we need you to start our UX team. Go be a manager. So they're not doing the boots on the ground work. They got plucked from there. And then the company was like, oh, we should probably do some UX stuff, but I could get this expert who has, like $100,000 a year salary, or I can get 4 designers who get paid like $40,000 a year, and all of them kind of do UX, and I've just like saved a ton of money. So sure. I think that is, Susan, does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different forces at work that have made it difficult for us to keep, researchers, to get and or keep researchers who have, understand the science, and keep them involved in projects. And it's like I said, Nick, I think it is, my guess is it is a little bit different over here, but I know we have clients, we taught a workshop recently, and I always ask the clients, who's going to be there and what is your objective and what do you want them to be able to do when they're done with the class. And a lot of them will say, well, I have this team, and it's the team that Guthrie described. It's that combination. There's designers, there's developers, there's art people, they're
the people who they get the initiative. We need to roll out new product X, new software portal for the.
And they're called a UX team, but what she said to me was, I don't have anyone on the team that really knows how to do user research. So she had a whole UX team and nobody, or maybe she said
this is my point.
She had one person and they
who
couldn't
kind
do
of
it
knew
all.
a little bit, yeah.
Well, no,
Oh,
I
no,
think
no.
that one person was
What-
pretty good, but
Who's I'm thinking of the
don't say names. I don't want to get in trouble.
but the recent work we did out in Connecticut.
Yeah, that's not even the one I'm thinking of.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Major company.
Yeah.
They had, I think 900 employees that work on all these projects across 1,000 different SKUs. They're just, all this stuff. And they have, and if I recall correctly, their UX research team was 3.
Yeah.
So there was the 3 people who were getting the requests to do the thousands of, they couldn't even do a fraction of it.
Well, and I don't know if it's, but doesn't that partly say that the organization doesn't understand or what UX research is,
or
doesn't value it very highly?
That's been the argument for 30 years.
For more than 30 years.
When you started doing UX stuff, the whole point was you should care about the user experience of what you had, and you have better products.
Right. But
in the 90s, that's what you were saying.
Somehow, what Nick is saying is somehow, somewhere in there, and somewhere in there, UX, we would say you should care about the user experience. And what we meant by that was
you'll make money. It will be good.
What we meant was you need to care about the users, and you have to have a methodology in place that guarantees that you will get feedback from users and that you will iterate your design based on your research and that you will test your design based on real people, the real target audience. We had this whole thing of what we meant by that, and somehow that got...
They heard ugly interface.
No,
but seriously, so how many projects have we done where the reason we were brought in was because a competitor, some industrial portal that has what we would call an ugly interface, and the top brass, the competition rolled out this nice pretty UI that wasn't ugly and didn't look like it was from 2004. And they started losing business. And so they said, we need a good user interface. But what they were they didn't really mean like a user experience. They literally were just meant it needs to look modern so that it sells.
Right. Well, years ago, I remember this one. And to me, this is, user experience or design is so integrally woven with psychology and that's just because of my mindset, and that's my own confirmation bias. And I remember many years ago I had put out some new marketing material at the website and probably in print, because this was years ago and you did a lot of things in print. And I was, all of a sudden I started getting a lot of calls for consulting work and people would say, oh yeah, we heard that, you do interface design and we want to, please come in and consult. And I would show up and I'd do my usual spiel, about, okay, here's what we need to do. And yet I got this string of clients who all looked at me and said, well, no, we don't want to do that. We just want you to design an interface.
Yes.
And I said,
wanted her to be the big shot designer that comes in.
I said, you want me to design a usable interface? And they were like, well, just design an interface.
Look pretty.
Yeah, exactly. We get that all the time.
And what I realized was when I changed my marketing material, I had started using the term interface design, which was a very hot term back then. And I had inadvertently left out the usability or the usable or the user part of it. I didn't mean to, because to me, interface design, the word usable or user is in there, but it didn't say that in my brochure. And it was like, oh my gosh, these people, I mean, nobody was really going to say out loud, no, we don't care if it's not usable. I mean, they weren't going to say that, but I think they were thinking
They didn't see the
that.
value, and they didn't want to spend the money.
They didn't, not only did they not want to spend the money, they didn't want to spend the time. They thought
Sure.
that was all like a waste of time. I would have clients say to me, well, no, we don't have time for that, and we're not interested in that. Like, and that was, could we discuss and research who the target audience is? No. No, we'll tell you who the target audience is, and do you have research about who they are and what? No, but they don't worry about it. So I changed my marketing materials, and then I got a lot less work because there were more people that wanted something designed than wanted something usably designed. So then that was a long time ago, but that was probably the beginning of this. Of this curve.
Yes, and that's exactly what happened.
It's the same problems. It's just prettier these days.
It is, and that because the buying population just wanted a solution rather than the inconvenient user research part. Everybody, all the designers have been snapped up doing UX UI. They've just chucked UX UI in front of it, and there's business for them. It started off they were actually known as wireframe monkeys in the UK. It was the UX practitioner who just went straight to solution, went straight to Azure, started making wireframes, and that's what they were known as it became an absolute nightmare. But the point is this isn't about keeping your users happy in terms of management and buying this stuff. This is about achieving their corporate goals of revenue, transformation, attitude change, behavioral change, whatever that is. That's the message that we need to get out there in the world today now, is that user research isn't a costly, time-consuming pain in the neck. It's what you need to do in order to drive the value or to get to the goals that you want to do. It's just that straightforward. It really is. In addition, unfortunately, when user research became a bit of a buzzword a few years ago, when you had Forbes and TED and all that sort of stuff going off about user research, all the agencies they made a fortune. They made an absolute killing.
They're still making a killing by now doing the UX designing in-house.
Yeah, but they're making a killing by doing the UX research outhouse in the agencies. And honestly, I've seen bills come in for 25, 30 grand for like an 8-user sample. Now that's English pounds. That's a lot of money for not a lot of users. And so, it's very difficult to justify that in a budget to do that regularly. And so they've made it really, really difficult. And to do it in-house is difficult because the skills aren't out there. And at least in the UK, all the clueful user researchers are actually working in government. So it's really, really hard to find the skills in the wild, which is why what Susan is saying is we need to let the kind of the low-paid psychologists who are graduating, let them know that there's a beautiful world here for them where they can fit right in and earn value for themselves and for the industry.
I think we hear a lot of people who say they can't get good talent. That there is a and Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there is an avalanche of entry-level design UX folks, and there's no experts to be had.
Yes, and we need more mentors. We need more mentors.
I don't know. I'm still concerned. My concern is. And my brain is going here, and so I don't have an answer, but I definitely want to think about how do we, how do we elevate the user research piece to the place where, for instance, marketing analytics is, or data analytics, where it's just, everybody wants it. They're willing to spend an enormous amount of money collecting the data, analyzing the data, visualizing the data once it's collected and analyzed. And we need, somehow we've got to elevate the user research piece to that level so it can get the funding. And I mean, I don't think the problem is we don't have enough people. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think the problem is we don't have enough people who could do the work or could learn to do the work.
But there's
I
no
think we
market
don't.
for it.
I think the people that are making decisions about creating new products and services aren't seeing the need or the value.
So
of
I
it.
know what the problem is, and I can tell you the
do?
problem right now. Yeah, I can tell you the problem
What?
exactly right now.
What?
The problem is a problem of translation. So when you get the whole point of the big, like you get all this data analytics stuff about, and you learn all these things, and you can you'll pay for all this data on which shelves are stocking this and that thing. So when you do, let's say you've done the best user UX work the world has ever seen, right? And you know exactly what the personas are or whatever the takeaways are that you're trying to get to. That's great. But then your design team has to translate that translate that into a good thing. And that is very difficult to do. If you're just talking about SEO and you're a corporate level, bigwig, the people roll in, they say, hey, you give us a bunch of money, we'll change your search items, and you'll go from here on the search to here on the search, and then you get more clicks. Or if you go to the marketing people, it's like, well, if we put, we did a bunch of research, and it turns out if you put good-looking people in an ad, then more people will click on it. And they're like, here's your $50,000, go have fun.
Yep.
But with UX, what's there's another step.
Yes, there is. Right.
And that's where they don't see the value, because to them, to the people who are making these decisions, what's the step? The step is the design group. So they see good design group equals good outcome.
Right.
And so the idea that, well, the design group takes what happened in the previous step and then turns it into a good outcome is a step too far and is too complicated of a message to see the direct link between the two. And I think that's the translation problem.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Guthrie. Let me extend your thinking just a little further, because this is where I see UX psychology and psychologists elevating themselves in the same way that Susan has just said. You talk about web analysis or web analysts. Web analytics is all about seeing what is happening. It's looking at your radar and seeing stuff going on. What it doesn't do is show you behavior, and it doesn't tell you why. And that's the absolutely critical difference between user research and multivariate testing and A/B and all the other stuff. These businesses will spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on Adobe Experience Manager and all the pro services to go with it, but they won't consider the other side of the equation, which is the user research part. So user researchers, psychologists need to work much closer with web analysts, because we're their investigators. So they can look on their radar and say, wow, there's a big blob happening there. There's something happening, a big bounce on that page, but I can't tell you why. They can look at the page and you can look at with designers, but you're guessing. It's all opinion. And the only way you can really fathom that out is through multivariate testing and effectively intelligent guessing. But actually, there's another way of doing that, and that is getting in the lab, watching people using it, talking to them, and trying to explain the analytics the behaviors, the spikes, the troughs that you're seeing in the analytics.
So instead of running towards the design teams, maybe our natural allies are actually the analytics teams.
Definitely, because they're much more scientifically based. But actually our natural allies, that it's like the holy trifecta or trinity is of the designer, the web analyst, and the researcher, because get those three running, communicating well and informing each other, and that's how magic happens. Iteration, involve the users.
So I know something, Guthrie, that we've been doing wrong then.
Oh, well, I never like to hear that, because that means work for me, and I don't like that.
I want to try something. I want to try an experiment, because recently, and with with another client whose name shall remain nameless. We were involved. We were brought in to add to a proposal.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that.
And we were the
why in the.
We were the user research and the why, and there was another group that was doing the analytics and the what, and then the idea, what this one company was pitching to the client and saying, okay, we're going to take the analytics, then we're going to take the user research, and it's going to tell us why, and then we'll put that together and we'll have these amazing answers for you. And we were asked to put together a proposal on the why without knowing anything about the analytics part, like what they were doing or how much money they were spending. And we bid it too small and too low. We need to be, if we're saying there's the what and here's the why, we've got to, our bids need to, we need to do huge studies. We have been too timid recently because we feel that people don't get it and they don't want it and all of that. I think we need to go back to the day when I did have these days in the past where I would bid these large research projects, with full statistical analysis and the whole thing. I think maybe we need to go back to that, and that might help elevate it, right? Because definitely. if you're spending $500,000 on the analytics and $10K to get the data on 5 people,
it's mad.
What's
insane.
The client supposed to think, though? If that's what so Guthrie, we're gonna change that around. Nick, this is fascinating stuff. Obviously, we think it's interesting. I have no idea whether what our listeners think. I hope they will email us.
I don't care about our users.
Oh, stop!
I just do this for my own personal.
Stop it! I can't stand it. Nick, we have managed to fritter away more than an hour, which does not surprise me. If people want to get a hold of you and they want to, I said I'd put up the link to the video, but if they want to get a hold of you and so on, what is the best way for people to reach you?
It's probably on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way is to, friend me up on LinkedIn, or I'm at Dr. Fine on Twitter. Is another way to get hold of me.
What is the LinkedIn and how do you spell it?
I'll tell you what. I will give that to you guys after this.
Give us
okay.
I'll put it in. Okay.
And also, I would love it if people would look at and subscribe to my channel, the UX Psychology channel. It's not my channel; it's our channel. And there's an introductory video called "In an Introduction to UX Psychology," which I kind of just spill my guts for 20 minutes with a structured presentation as to the logic behind all this thinking.
It's very good.
Thank you.
That was why I contacted you, because I saw the video. So, hey, fun conversation. You got me thinking now. This is dangerous. Just ask Guthrie. He does not want me thinking. He just wants me doing the work.
Yep. Just keep pumping out that work product. That's my job as the wrangler over here.
Well, just say the word and I'll be on a plane to Minnesota in a heartbeat.
Wisconsin,
sorry.
Doesn't matter.
Or Chicago.
I live in Chicago, so
I'm in Wisconsin. You go to Chicago. I'll meet you down there.
Lovely.
If you're ever working on manifestos, let us know. We'll chip in.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.